Ground, it's still sitting. You can see it over there. Not from this vantage point, but it's still there. And I think Captain Garcia will talk about it. Yeah, 3 a.m. it was lowered.
And you don't happen to know the status of the two patients? Are they still in the hospital?
Yes, last I heard, they're still in the hospital.
So they were inside the wreckage for how long before you got to them?
We are in constant they called 911 from the plane, and we were in constant contact. First they were with the dispatcher, then transferred to us here on the scene. Constant contact, but whatever, 5:30 to 12 midnight.
6:30, 7:30, 8:30, 7 hours? Is that right?
Sounds right. I haven't done the math on that, but yeah, I mean, and the process, of course, was there was a widespread power outage. And the main response from the Pepco contractor, they brought specialized trucks that had booms, a bucket truck 178 feet tall. The truck was fully insulated, so they had to actually ground that before they went up and basically secured the wires, broken wires and so forth. So that that took some time to do that, not only for them to get here from I think Elkton, Maryland, and but the good thing is we didn't have to be hasty about it because we were in contact with the people. They were okay. They were banged up because they were in a crash, but they were okay. So.
But you didn't. I mean, at what point were you certain that plane wouldn't just fall?
There was no point we were certain the plane was not going to fall until we secured it. Once the power was, even static electricity, the electrical current was secured, but you have to be concerned with static electricity, and the weather conditions were very favorable for that to occur, so that was a concern. But throughout the whole incident, we were concerned that the plane would shift. It did shift, according to the occupants, a little bit, at one point. Yeah,
And this may be. I mean, did it seem like it was being held in place by the tower, not the wires, correct?
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. But
so just to clarify, it was the passenger or the pilot, but somebody on board was the first 911 phone call that Montgomery County Fire and Rescue got.
yeah.
Is the NTSB here right now?
Captain Garcia will address that. They were here last night. I don't know the status.
Do you know if it was the pilot or the passenger?
No.
Do you know how far we are from the airport?
Probably the way the crow flies, about a mile. A mile to the airport. All right, any questions? Thank you for coming. Just kidding.
How tall was the truck? You said 178 feet?
Yep. Yep.
78? And it was a Pepco truck?
Contractor.
Contract.
Yeah. Basically, the company that name is Cakester at the moment that builds the tower. So obviously they're very familiar with it. In conjunction with the Pepco crew, we had lots of those people were well prepared, knew what they were doing, and it showed. Along with our technical rescue people, and I think for those of you who were here as we went through the process, we explained it was probably going to take an hour, and it only took 30 minutes. So each time we estimated how long it was going to take, it took less time because of the efficiency of the crew. So
Did anybody actually measure how far up they were?
Probably about 100 feet.
Pete, how lucky are the survivors?
How lucky are they? The outcome was the best best possible outcome you could have. So they're very fortunate to survive. Just to think of that environment, you had not only a high angle rescue, a crash, an extrication, and transport to the hospital. So they're fortunate.
Did they say anything to you guys when they came down? I know that they talked about last night hypothermia. Were they able to talk to you guys at all?
Yeah. So we were talking to them the whole time. And kudos to our people who were keeping them calm and vice versa. But so there was good communication with them, and they were anxious to get out of there. They at one point they wanted to get out, and we wanted to get them out, but we had to wait till it was safe for them and safe for us.
What were some of the comments that they were making when they were out there?
I don't know.
How high was the voltage? 500?
I don't know.
In all of your experiences as a first responder, have you ever seen anything like this?
Yeah. I've been around the block a few times. So. But this is a challenging event, of course. Being suspended and tangled in power lines. It's like a car crash, up in the air. So it was very challenging, but we had the response.
Was one of them?
Do you know what made the plane go down the
Don't know.
and say anything?
These would be excellent questions to ask Chief Goldstein.
Hey, were they trying to get out? We had like a shot where it looked like one of the guy was trying to get out. Were they actually trying to get out at some point and climb down themselves?
That's what it looked like. I mean, wouldn't you? But I think because we had good communication with them, and we wanted to make it safe for them and safe for us. So, end result was good.
Peter, are you aware of a report from 1992 that shows that the pilot, same name?
I can tell you, you don't even have to ask the question. I'm not aware of anything from 1992.
You're not aware that he's potentially crashed an aircraft before?
Pete, you said how much longer?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
10 minutes ago, I said 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to go check on that right now.
Thank you. Oh, well, you and these folks, they keep trying to set the line.
You already announced the captain and
Yep.
Yeah, but he's got to spell his first name.
Need it now, sir?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
First name is Prendy, P-R-E-N-D-I.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Captain. So the players are here, and Chief Goldstein, President Cooper, and Captain Garcia.
So, all right, thank you all for coming back to the scene. A lot has changed since we were here last, talking at about 1 o'clock this morning, and we wanted to provide you an update on the operation since we were here last. Joined with Ms. Cooper from PEPCO, as well as the Captain Garcia from MSP. County Executive Elrich is planning to arrive and join us as we are going through this press conference. So, while we were here last at 1 o'clock talking, there was a meeting occurring at the same time that was planning the next steps of stabilizing the aircraft as well as the tower. That plan took effect. Some of your folks were here, and roughly 3:30, just before 4 o'clock this morning, the plane and the engine, or all of the plane, was removed from the tower. The steps which occurred there is they stabilized the plane by the crane, then segmented the plane and the engine as two pieces, lowered the plane to the ground, then transitioned to lowering the engine to the ground. The captain from MSP will be able to talk about the plane, the next steps in the investigative process. So just at that 4 o'clock hour is when fire rescue departed the scene in conjunction with PEPCO and AUI. There was no longer a desire and a need for any fire rescue resources on scene. Updating to the activities that occurred last night. As you know, we had 2 people that we transported to a local trauma center. Both of those folks, the condition has improved. One is still in the hospital, and that's all the information that I have on the 2 occupants that were in the plane.
Can't say which one.
Can't say which one. So as we talk about, it was extrication complete of both folks from the aircraft at 12:30 in the morning, which was right at about 8 hours from the time of the original strike of the tower at 5:30. And then again, just before 4 a.m., 3 hours later, the aircraft was removed from the tower.
Was it 8 hours or 7 hours?
7 hours was 5:30 to 11:30, which was when the grounding was completed. And then between 11:30 and, I'm going to say, 00:25 and 00:36 is when the 2 people got out of the plane. So 8 hours, both were on the ground from the original strike. I'll get to you in a second, sir. No problem, no problem. Wanted to reiterate that the resources were here for the safety of the occupants in the aircraft, the safety of the utility workers working on site, safety of the fire rescue personnel here. That was and is complicated by the high voltage power that's being transmitted, or was, a part of this transmission system, and what is the concern, as I outlined, the static or residual electricity that is present in that system and can only be verified safe by the installation of grounding support. So that's what was part of our plan, part of our operations, and why we took very deliberate and time-consuming steps to effect the rescue and the removal of those 2 folks. As well as, remember, from the beginning until the extrication, we were in constant contact. I use constant to outline that we were in reoccurring and consistent contact. As outlined earlier, we purposely segmented that into roughly 30-minute time blocks where we would call and touch base with the folks in the aircraft to conserve cell battery. But that was a continual process as we were talking to the 2 folks in the airplane to give them reassurance, as well as touch base on their status, their conditions. The process, Ms. Cooper will talk about our coordination and how that was critical in the steps. And if we could go through the updates from PEPCO as well as MSP, and then we'll touch base with questions, and I'll start with you, sir, okay?
Did the plane hit the tower or the wires?
We'll touch through that after Ms. Cooper finishes, okay?
Thank you very much, Chief Goldstein. On behalf of PEPCO, we want to thank the emergency responders, starting with fire and rescue services, for the partnership and the coordination in order for us to be able to support them and securely bringing out the individuals who were in that aircraft. I wanted to acknowledge also our crews, as well as AUI, our contractor, who worked seamlessly throughout this process and over the evening. One of the things I wanted to highlight as well is to thank our customers for their patience as we work to restore service. One of the things that we had to do in this process, and this was highlighted by the chief, was make certain that this zone was safe as well as secure. That took grounding to ensure that there was no residual power, de-energizing the actual power source within the area as well. We want to reach out also to acknowledge the team and the families who were impacted by this, and hoping that they have a speedy recovery. I wanted to go back a little bit. This event occurred around 5:30 yesterday afternoon. We worked in coordination to ensure that this area was safe. We restored service to all customers by around 11:58 p.m. last night, and we were able to do that based on the configuration of our system. So we have redundancy built into our system. So we had to ensure that these lines were de-energized, but we were able to simultaneously restore service to those feeders that were providing service to other customers. So I wanted to again reiterate that this was a very challenging experience, that we worked collaboratively with the county, wanted to recognize the county executive, Mark Elridge, as well, and wanting to recognize again the fire and rescue services and our emergency response team as well as crews. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Prendy Garcia of the Maryland State Police. At this stage, our responsibility now is to continue to support the investigation of the NTSB, the National Traffic Safety Board, as they have assigned an agent to respond. Once they're here, they will be looking at the aircraft before it's moved. We're hoping to open the road sometime this evening to include coordinations of moving the remaining parts of the aircraft. At this time, we don't have a true estimate, but we're working with all the agencies to, again, open the roadway as soon as possible, and we want to do that safely, and we also want to remove the aircraft, but only after it's been inspected by the NTSB. And we will be staying here until that is completed. All right? Thank you.
Let me touch base with a couple elements of geography and reference, and then be opening for questions. There are two towers here. There's two parallel systems operating here in this right-of-way. It's identified as the North Tower and the South Tower. The North Tower is closest to us as we stand here, technically close to McDonald's. The South Tower sits behind that. As you asked, sir, the aircraft did strike the power lines of the North Tower before it then collided with and became embedded in the structure of the South Tower. As the image behind us identifies, the crew is working now on the North Tower, restringing power lines there. You may be able to see the lines hanging down as a part of the North Tower. Those were struck and severed by the aircraft in that collision sequence. So it struck the lines of the North Tower and then became embedded in the South Tower. Now I'll open up for questions. Yeah.
This is very basic, and everybody can talk to them. How did you figure out how to do this? Inspiration, invention? It seems mind-boggling to learn.
So as Ms. Cooper outlined, it's coordination, it's pre-planning, it's pre-dialogue. You create relationships and partnerships with PEPCO as well as all the law enforcement agencies to have that occurring prior to any disaster. When you have this event and you communicate, there was multiple calls pertaining to an aircraft in this area. Originally Montgomery Village and Shadow Oak, which is a little bit away from here. When you do arrive and find an aircraft, little aircraft, but anything is still an aircraft embedded in the tower, it's quite complex. You start through the capabilities. Question of safety of that stray electricity, followed by the safety of the structure. As PEPCO folks were arriving, they were providing us the initial and kept building upon that data set that the tower could not be deemed safe to engage with until it was bonded and grounded. Then, once that was complete, a preferred method of access would be by crane, not by climbing the tower. That was then fed into the action plan. Early on into the incident, we made contact with the local, resource, the crane company, and had additional crane resources here to assist PEPCO and AUI. So it's building information, taking that, inject all of that parts together. You just can't walk up and take an assessment of, has that power pole stable? So it's all partnership and adding those injects. So I'll start with one here a second, and I'll go over to.
Sure. You were in constant contact with the folks inside the plane the entire time. Can you describe what it was like for those two as they were dangling there for hours?
So when we first started the contact, there was a 911 call taker at the Quince Orchard facility who stayed on the line with the folks in the aircraft for an extended period of time. And we then started relaying messages through her to state to the folks inside the aircraft. Then at a point, we transitioned that to, we called the aircraft occupants directly and began that dialogue. Again, we segmented that to periodic updates. What was it like? They were anxious. They were concerned about the stability of the aircraft remaining in the tower structure. They were, disoriented to the severity of or the complexity of the circumstances. So as all of our call takers do, you work on reassuring them, providing them frequent updates, establishing a dialogue with them so that you're exchanging information. Additionally, that begins our medical assessment process. We started asking questions about their medical conditions, doing everything we would do face-to-face with the patient, but via the telephone. And then beginning to provide them reassurance as we had information. So there was one chief officer on site that got that assignment, and he stuck with that assignment until the end at 12:30 when they were both on the ground.
So can you talk to that? It was very cold in terms of their medical condition. It was very cold up there.
Hypothermia was a concern, as I outlined earlier, and indeed they had orthopedic injuries, traumatic injuries, and then the environmental concerns from the event. So
from the position of the plane, how were they positioned? Were they like this so that they were facing down, or were they facing up?
So Paul, it's going to be more practical to say that the nose of the aircraft was up, the tail of the aircraft was down and broken and bending down more than the nose was. But as you outlined in the other question relates to, their positioning in the aircraft did also impact their comfort as well as their medical condition. So that was limited because you can't just freely move around inside the aircraft. Hold on.
Could you expand on that? What do you mean their positions? Were they upside down?
They weren't upside down from what I know, but they were, unable to move around a lot in the aircraft. Can I pause for a second? Transition to Mr. Elrich, if you wish. So, and then we'll come back to questions, okay?
So I just wanted to first of all, thank everybody who's involved in this. This is not in anybody's manual. I guess this will be a chapter in some new manual, but it's not something anybody was prepared for. And I wanted to thank, PEPCO, the air park folks, our police and fire and rescue, and the cooperation from the FAA to be successful at getting the people out of the airplane and then getting the plane out of there. This could have been a whole lot worse. It would have been, that plane could have kept flying and been disabled by clipping wires and wound up not being able to be controlled. So if it was going to stop someplace, that was probably the best place for it to stop. I'm just really glad that people were able to respond this quickly. I want to thank PEPCO especially for getting everybody's power rerouted. To go from 120,000 people without power to very quickly have everybody getting their power back. It may have seemed like a long time for some people, but I know we were thinking this would be a very long time potentially to get power back, and that didn't pan out. And the good thing is it showed the redundancy in the system, because that meant that they had to route the electricity that otherwise would have been coming from here. They had to get it to all those homes and businesses another way, which tells you we've got some resiliency built in to the system here. So I'm just really happy that, this hasn't been a tragedy and that, it's been manageable and that we all were able to put the resources together to get it done reasonably quickly.
County Executive, did you lose power at your house?
Nope. I'm in the far southern end of the county.
How lucky are the survivors?
I would think you're a whole lot lucky. I mean, hitting a tower at 80 to 100 miles an hour or something like that, and then not being able to go forward anymore and come to a sudden stop. Ask yourself what it would be like in a car to hit a wall at 80 to 100 miles an hour. I'd say pretty lucky.
Next week is the 9th anniversary of the crash that killed the mother and the 2 children. And at that time, we had a lot of residents tell us at the time that they were concerned about the operations of the air park and that the safety enhancement that they would like to have seen 9 years ago. Are there questions as county executive moving forward that you're going to ask and want to know about in regards to the operations of the airport?
Well, ironically, we have a fresh report that we have that we're going to be looking at. I'd say that, my first question is, was this thing even on the flight path? And if it wasn't on the flight path, why wasn't it on the flight path? Because it was too low from what I heard for where it should have been in the approach. And obviously didn't know there were wires and a pole here. That's the tower. That to me is a problem. So I want to know how that even got to that point.
Has anybody heard anything from the pilot, like, oh, I was lost in fog, or my altimeter was out, or anything at all? Anybody addressed that? He's a very experienced pilot, flies in and out of here every other day.
No specific information was relayed about his reporting or his information on that, so don't have that information.
What was the weather conditions, Scott?
So the weather condition, as I was told by the FAA representative here on site, was beginning fog or a cloud layer that had changed over the day. So the cloud layer was set to be at a certain level, but then it transitioned or became a lower level as the day progressed. But he was in a instrument-based approach and aircraft for, GAI or Gaithersburg Airport.
And a question for either the chief or state police: have any of the authorities had any interaction with this pilot in the last couple decades or so?
No, ma'am, not. We don't have any incidents or anything that we've ever investigated him here or looked into him regarding flying or anything of that nature.
Again, just following up on Tom's question about concerns about the air park. Some residents nearby saying that this is the first time they've had a crash close by. Any plans to change anything to
That would probably be the executive to answer that question.
As I understand that the FAA pretty much calls all the shots on this. But we will be talking about, if they call all the shots, then they're responsible for why a person was where they were at this time. They were supposed to be if they were on an automated approach. I want to know what their response is to this.
Was he trying to land? I mean, at the airport, do we know?
So that was the original flight path that was the original flight plan as filed, was the location in New York to Gaithersburg. That is correct.
Chief, I wanted to ask another question about this. There was a period that we caught on video where the pilot was actually trying to climb down, it looked like.
So
can you talk to us about that? And did you try and talk him out of it? What did your people do at that point?
So absolutely, we were using binoculars and other vision assistance from the ground. We could see him reaching out the window of the aircraft. No, based upon the best knowledge that I had in our dialogue with him, he never got out of the aircraft. He was in contact with the structure or the galvanized metal of the aircraft, but we did communicate with him how that was a excessive risk that was not needed. Staying in the aircraft was a better location to be. But anybody who's in a circumstance like that may be thinking that getting out is better than staying where they are, and I can understand parts of that consideration.
Talk about your emotions around all this. I mean, how do you feel knowing that this was a good outcome and the survivors were not all that hurt?
So it's absolutely our goal is to protect lives and property, and this is protecting the life. A lot of work was put in place, as I said, to do this as safely as possible and as rapidly as possible for all of the folks that were on the ground and the 2 folks that were in the air. And to do that and to have them assist us getting out of the aircraft is a great benefit. To do that with the opportunity now that we have information that one has already been discharged and one is in a stable condition, that is definitely a benefit, and I appreciate everything that came together to help for that day. Let me jump over here for a second.
We're in constant contact with the pilot, as you said, every 30 minutes or so. Did we ever mention at any point any kind of mechanical issue, any kind of problem with the plane?
No information that was relayed on to me.
Just a quick follow-up. I mean, you, I'm sure, responded to plenty of small aircraft crashes in your career. To come onto a small aircraft crash like this and see 2 people alive and to know that right away, what initially went through your head? What was the thought and feeling?
How do you eat this elephant? And you eat it one bite at a time. And you have the elephant here is the aircraft, the power, the pole, and the height. And how you address that. So you do that one bite at a time, and as we talked about, you take that incrementally to that point.
Were you scared?
You look through the processes and you hope your capability matches the event dynamics, and we got to a positive outcome. Tom.
Thank God this didn't happen, but could you tell us how was it that they were not electrocuted immediately upon hitting those power lines?
Right.
Do you know?
So ultimately, when they came into contact with the actual infrastructure, which was ultimately that plane ended up impacting the South Tower, it was my understanding that the propellers came into contact with the wires, but immediately went into the actual structure. So they were not impacting the actual lines where that plane was actually sitting. And we were able to immediately take actions to de-energize, again, that particular area, as well as the power lines that were coming into that area, and to ground to ensure that we did not have any residual power flow as well.
So even though they struck the lines of the North Tower, they did not knock out the lines of the North Tower, they landed on the South Tower?
They ended up landing into the actual South Tower, correct.
But connecting between the wire and the tower, that could have been enough to close the circuit and cause them some serious...
Right, but it did not, and we're still evaluating and assessing all of these particular aspects of it as well.
When was the power restored for everybody?
Power was restored at 11:58 p.m.
For everyone?
For everyone, yes.
Can you describe how much, I see one line down here, 2 lines down, no damage to the tower that I can see, no bent parts or anything like that. Can you describe what you guys had to fix for these 100?
Right, so I'll say this. We are constantly in the process of assessing, because you have to do the damage assessment. That's taking place as work is ultimately progressing. So there may be some damage to that particular structure. We're evaluating that and taking the steps in real time. We have already made repairs to the South Tower, and we're currently working on the North Tower presently as well.
Okay, last question from me here, Chief for Montgomery County Elbridge. You know, it's been a busy month for Montgomery County in terms of responding to large incidents. What kind of toll has this taken on the department?
So you're absolutely right, and thank you, because each one of these incidents is an emotional impact to our responders. You come to work every day with the intent and the purpose of helping others in the time of need. Some days that may be a person who falls off a bike, some days that may be a person who cuts their finger, some days that may be a plane crash. You take that. We have great resources within the county of behavioral health and mental health support resources, doctors and peer support folks, and those are made available to any and all that need them. One of the things that was also brought to the scene last night was County Health and Human Services mobile crisis team to assist with the residents and the civilians on scene. So a lot of resources from all of county government were here. And this time of year is always an additional impact to all responders, because it is taxing when you have these emergencies in a holiday period. But I appreciate your thought, and yes, my appreciation to each and every one of our folks here. So I'm going to let Pete walk up because he's coming in, and we'll say thank you very much.
Right, Chief. Thank you.
All right, yes, thank you all. That's it, and thank the County Executive, Captain Garcia, President Cooper, and Chief Goldstein. Any follow-up questions that I can answer?
Could the photographers go down and get B-roll of the aircraft?
The instrument flight rules.
Probably not. I think there's an area where you can go over here and you can see the plane. You can see the plane if you just go over here behind the shopping center.
Okay, so we go to...
Yeah, you can't go up this way, but you can go back that way, I believe.
Would an alternative to closing the airport be
We'll get through it.
very
That's all we'll do. Thank you very much, man. Be safe.